Have you ever shocked yourself with your own behavior? Not the big, dramatic moments people post about. The small ones, the quiet ones, the ones that happen so fast you can't even explain them. You hear yourself say a sentence you didn't intend to say. You watch yourself scroll, avoid, procrastinate, numb out. You pick a fight you don't even want. You pull away from someone you actually care about, and later you sit alone thinking, why did I do that? If you're honest, you've probably tried to label it. Stress, burnout, anxiety, a bad mood, a personality flaw. But there's a deeper possibility, and it's far more unsettling. What if you're not fully driving your own life? What if there is a part of you that is already making decisions, quietly, indirectly, relentlessly, while your conscious mind only shows up afterward to explain, justify, and clean up the mess? Carl Gustav Jung, one of the most influential psychologists of the 20th century, gave that hidden part a name, the shadow. And Jung's claim was not poetic, it was structural. The shadow is not a rare disorder, it is a normal feature of the human psyche. It is the collection of everything in you that you learn to hide in order to be accepted. Not only your bad qualities, not only your anger, jealousy, selfishness, or cruelty, also your strength, your ambition, your desire, your hunger to be seen, your ability to say no, your capacity to dominate, to compete, to take space. The shadow is everything that didn't fit the version of you that earned love. So it went underground. And here is the first brutal rule Jung would force you to accept. What you bury doesn't disappear. It develops a life of its own. The mind is not a clean room where unwanted traits are thrown away. The mind is a pressure system, and pressure always seeks release. When a part of you is denied, it does not die, it adapts. It learns to express itself indirectly. That is why the shadow rarely shows up as a clear confession. It shows up as patterns. The same argument in different relationships, the same self-sabotage right before progress, the same "I don't know why I did that" after a reaction that feels out of character. The shadow is not a monster hiding in the basement. It is a roommate you pretend doesn't exist until they start rearranging the house at night. And the more you pretend the shadow isn't there, the more control it gains. Because anything unconscious cannot be negotiated with, it cannot be reasoned with, it cannot be integrated, it can only act. That is why people with the cleanest, most good self-image can sometimes be the most dangerous, not to others, but to themselves. If you believe you are only kind, you will not see your cruelty when it appears. If you believe you are only rational, you will not see the emotional manipulation hiding inside your logic. If you believe you are harmless, you will not recognize the resentment you're building every time you swallow your boundaries. And resentment is one of the shadow's favorite disguises because it feels justified, it feels moral, it feels like you're the victim. But it is often your disowned power trying to return. To understand the shadow, you need to understand how it is built. Most people imagine repression is dramatic, as if the psyche slams a door on something terrible. In reality, repression is usually quiet. It happens in 1,000 small moments. A child gets angry and is told they are too much. A child cries and is told to stop being weak. A child says no and is punished for disrespect. A child celebrates themselves and is shamed for arrogance. Nothing cinematic needs to happen. All that's required is a repeated message. This part of you costs you belonging. And the child does the intelligent thing. They hide that part. Because the first addiction is not pleasure, it is approval. You were trained, like almost everyone, to build an identity that could survive in the group. You learned the mask that worked. The helpful one, the funny one, the smart one, the quiet one, the responsible one, the easy one. Jung called this the persona. your social face, the role you play to be recognized, rewarded, and safe. The persona is not evil, it's necessary. But the persona has a shadow, because every role requires sacrifice. If you became the good one, you had to hide your selfishness and your rage. If you became the strong one, you had to hide your fear and your tenderness. If you became the rational one, you had to hide your need and your longing. If you became the peacemaker, you had to hide your aggression and your boundaries. Those hidden parts didn't vanish. They became the shadow. And here is the mistake people make. They think the shadow is optional. It isn't. The shadow is not a choice. Only your relationship to it is. You can integrate it, or you can be possessed by it. And possession doesn't look like Hollywood. Possession looks like overreacting to a small comment because it touches an old wound. Sabotaging a relationship because intimacy exposes your fear. Procrastinating because success would demand a new identity. Chasing validation and calling it love. Staying available to everyone and feeling secretly resentful. The shadow doesn't have to destroy your life in one explosion. It can slowly drain it through repetition. So let's get precise. How does the shadow run your life? It does it through three main mechanisms: projection, compulsion, and self-sabotage. First, projection. Jung observed that the psyche tries to keep itself clean. If a trait is unacceptable in you, the mind often pushes it outward. You start seeing it everywhere, outside yourself. You become obsessed with dishonest people, arrogant people, needy people, weak people, greedy people, and you tell yourself, I hate that. But hatred is not just dislike. Hatred is fascination with rejection. Hatred is energy. It means something is happening inside you. Projection is the mind's way of avoiding self-confrontation. Instead of saying, I have a hunger for recognition, you say, everyone is arrogant. Instead of saying, I have aggression, you say, people are so hostile. Instead of saying, I'm afraid of being insignificant, you say, they're all shallow. Projection turns your shadow into a battlefield, and then you spend your life fighting external enemies that are partly internal. This is why some relationships feel like fate. You meet someone, and within days, they trigger your deepest emotions. You say, they're toxic, or they're manipulative, or they're narcissistic. Sometimes you're right. Sometimes you're not. But even when you are right, your intensity is a clue. Because what triggers you that strongly is usually connected to a disowned part of you. A person who has integrated their shadow can still see danger, but they don't become hypnotized by it. They can respond without being possessed. Projection is what makes you reactive. It makes you emotional in the wrong places. And a reactive person is easy to control, because if I know what provokes you, I can steer you. Second, compulsion. The shadow does not argue with you like a conscious thought. It pushes you. It creates urges. It creates patterns that repeat even when they hurt. This is why people say, I don't know why I keep doing this. You do know, but not in words. You know in the body. You know in the tension that builds before you send the message you shouldn't send. You know in the emptiness that appears right before you relapse into the same distraction. You know in the panic that rises when someone gets too close. Compulsion is the shadow trying to express something without your permission, because you never gave it a legitimate channel. If you never allowed yourself to feel anger, anger returns as impulsive cruelty.
If you never allowed yourself to want, desire returns as obsession. If you never allowed yourself to need returns as manipulation. The shadow is not only what you hide from others, it is what you hide from yourself. And what you hide from yourself becomes a force. Third, self-sabotage. This is where the shadow becomes almost tragic, because you can consciously want a better life and still unconsciously fight it. You say you want success, but you procrastinate. You say you want love, but you avoid vulnerability. You say you want peace, but you keep returning to chaos. Why?
Because growth threatens identity. And identity is what the persona is built on. If you change, you risk losing the role that once kept you safe. So the shadow tries to protect you. Not with logic, with instinct. It whispers, "Don't change." Not as a voice, but as a behavior. You forget the meeting. You miss the deadline. You start the argument. You choose the familiar disappointment instead of the unfamiliar responsibility. Self-sabotage is often not laziness, it is loyalty to an old survival strategy. This is why the shadow is not your enemy. It is a guardian that became distorted. It protects you using outdated information. It protects you as if you are still the child who needed approval to survive. And that is why adult life becomes a confusing loop. You feel mature in some ways, but in key moments, you regress. Your body reacts before your mind. You become someone you don't recognize. Then you feel ashamed. And shame is another cage. Because shame doesn't integrate the shadow, shame drives it deeper. If you want the shadow to stop running your life, you need to understand a painful principle. Whatever you refuse to own, owns you. Jung did not believe in purity, he believed in wholeness. Wholeness is a confrontation. It means admitting that you are capable of what you condemn. Not because you want to be immoral, but because denial is weakness. A person who thinks they are incapable of harm is not virtuous. They are powerless. And powerless people are dangerous in a different way. They become resentful. They become passive-aggressives. They become manipulatable. They become addicted to moral superiority. Because if you can't act, you judge. Judgment becomes your substitute for power. This is why the shadow often shows up as being right. You might not be allowed to be angry, but you can be righteous. You might not be allowed to confront, but you can criticize. You might not be allowed to take space, but you can punish people with distance. These are socially acceptable forms of aggression. The shadow finds a way. And if you are not careful, your life becomes a series of indirect attacks and secret resentments. So what does integration look like? Not affirmations, not pretending you're fine, not trying to think positive. Integration is a relationship. It begins with observation. You watch your reactions like data, not like evidence of your worth. You notice when you become disproportionately intense, when you feel the urge to prove yourself, when you feel the urge to destroy something, when you feel the urge to disappear. And instead of acting immediately, you ask, what part of me is speaking right now? Not what thought, what part? Because the psyche is not one voice, it is an inner community. There is the persona, the mask you wear. There is the child, the part that learned fear. There is the shadow, the part that holds what was rejected. And there is the self, the deeper organizing principle Jung believed we slowly approach through individuation. Most people live ruled by the persona. They do what keeps them acceptable. But the persona cannot carry a whole life. It collapses under pressure. And when it collapses, the shadow takes over. Integration means you stop pretending the persona is the whole story.
You stop insisting that you are only the version of yourself that people approve of. You begin to include what you excluded. And this begins with a brutal mirror. What do you hate in others? Not what annoys you, the traits that make you feel disgust, the traits that make you feel contempt. Those traits are often connected to your shadow. For example, if you despise needy people, ask yourself what need you deny in yourself. If you despise weak people, ask yourself what vulnerability you're terrified to show. If you despise selfish people, ask yourself where you abandoned your own needs to be loved. If you despise arrogant people, ask yourself where you secretly crave recognition but feel guilty about it. This is not about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming power. Because every projection is a leak. It drains energy outward. And the more energy you leak into projections, the less you have for your own life. This is why some people feel exhausted by other people's behavior. It's not only what others do, it's what their behavior activates in you. Integration is not becoming soft, it's becoming sovereign. When you integrate the shadow, you become harder to manipulate because guilt loses its grip. If you own your aggression, you don't need to prove you're harmless. If you own your desire, you don't need to hide it behind excuses. If you own your capacity for darkness, you don't need to pretend you're pure. And when you stop pretending, something quiet happens. Your nervous system calms because you are no longer splitting yourself in two. Splitting is expensive. It costs psychic energy. Jung believed the psyche behaves like an energy system. Every time you repress a feeling, you spend energy holding it down. Every time you maintain a false image, you spend energy performing. Every time you avoid your truth, you spend energy managing reality. That energy has to come from somewhere, so you become tired, irritable, numb. And then you think something is wrong with you. But often the exhaustion is not life itself, it is the cost of being divided. This is why shadow integration can feel like relief, not because your life becomes easy, but because you stop fighting yourself in the background. Now let's talk about the shadow's most common hiding place: goodness. Many people build their identity around being a good person. Good means polite. Good means agreeable. Good means available. Good means forgiving. Good means never being a problem. But goodness, when it is used as a persona, is often fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of being disliked. And fear-based goodness creates a predictable life. You become dependable, but you also become exploitable. You overgive, you overextend, you overexplain, and then resentment grows because a part of you knows you are betraying yourself. This is why people who are too good often have shocking outbursts, because the shadow eventually demands payment. The more you suppress your boundaries, the more violent their return. The more you swallow your anger, the more poisonous it becomes. This is why Jung did not celebrate repression. He saw it as the beginning of neurosis, not because morality is bad, but because denial is unstable. The shadow is a debt, and debts are paid one way or another. So if you want to stop the shadow from running your life, there are 3 movements you must make. First, stop moralizing your emotions. Anger is not evil. Desire is not shameful. Ambition is not arrogance. They can become destructive, yes, but destruction happens most often when these forces are unconscious. Your goal is not to eliminate them. Your goal is to bring them into consciousness. Second, give your shadow a language. Most people don't have words for their disowned parts, so the shadow speaks through action. It sabotages, it lashes out, it withdraws. But you can change this by naming what you feel. Not publicly, privately. When the urge arises, instead of acting, you say, I want to punish. I want control. I want to disappear. I want to be seen.
I want revenge. I want approval. This feels ugly. That's the point. The shadow hates being named because naming makes it conscious, and consciousness reduces possession. Third, practice boundaries as shadow integration. Boundaries are not just social skills, they are psychological integration. Every time you say no when you mean no, you reclaim disowned power. Every time you tolerate discomfort instead of people-pleasing, you integrate aggression responsibly. Every time you stop over-explaining, you stop performing innocence. This is why boundaries make some people angry, not because you are cruel, because you are no longer playing the role they depended on. And that brings us to a hard truth. When you integrate your shadow, your relationships change, because your persona was part of the contract. People got used to a predictable version of you, the always available one, the calm one, the forgiving one, the one who never made things awkward. But that version might not be whole. So when you start integrating, you become less predictable, and predictability is the foundation of control. Some people will respect you more, quietly. Others will test you. They will provoke you just to see if they still have access to your reaction. Because as long as you react on command, you are still controllable. The shadow is not only personal, it is relational. People also have shadows, and when you stop playing your role, their shadow reacts. They might accuse you, mock you, guilt you, not because you are wrong, because your growth threatens their stability. This is why individuation can feel lonely. Jung believed becoming whole often requires temporary distance from the collective, not because you hate people, but because you can no longer betray yourself to belong. And this is where many people panic. They prefer the familiar pain of performance over the uncertain freedom of authenticity. So they return to the mask. They apologize for their boundaries. They shrink their desires. They hide their truth. And the shadow wins again. But if you endure the discomfort, something changes. Your life becomes simpler, not easier, simpler. You spend less energy managing other people's expectations. You spend less energy maintaining false images. You spend less energy fighting your own instincts. And because you are not leaking energy into repression and projection, you become more present, more stable. You stop living in reaction. You start living in choice. And choice is the beginning of dignity. Now, let's be clear. Integrating the shadow does not make you gentle. It makes you honest. It means you stop pretending you are only light. You accept that you are capable of harm. And because you accept it, you can contain it. This is the paradox Jung offered. Only the person who knows their darkness can be trusted with their light. The person who thinks they are pure is often the one who becomes cruel without noticing, because their cruelty doesn't feel like cruelty. It feels like righteousness. It feels like justice. It feels like being the good one finally snapping. But the snap is not sudden. It was built slowly through denial. And you can test this in a simple way. Pay attention to the moments when you feel an urgent need to do something immediately, to send the message, to defend yourself, to correct the other person, to prove you are right, to disappear before you can be rejected. Urgency is rarely wisdom. Urgency is usually the shadow. Because the shadow doesn't like slow time. Slow time creates reflection. Reflection creates choice. And choice breaks possession. So the next time you feel that familiar inner pressure, try this. Do not argue with it and do not obey it. Just notice it. Notice where it lives in your body, your jaw, your chest, your stomach, your shoulders. Notice what story appears in your mind. They don't respect me. I'm about to lose them. I'm not enough. I need to fix this now. Then ask one question. What am I trying to protect? Sometimes you're protecting pride. Sometimes you're protecting fear. Sometimes you're protecting an old wound that never healed. Jung believed that the unconscious speaks in symbols, not explanations. That's why your reactions often feel irrational. They are not built from today, they are built from history. And if you want a deeper mirror, look at your dreams. In dreams, the persona relaxes, the mask falls asleep, and the shadow has room to appear. It may appear as a stranger, an enemy, a dangerous figure, a version of you doing things you would never do in daylight. Jung would say, don't panic. Ask what that figure represents. What energy is trying to enter your life? What strength? What rage? What desire? What boundary? What truth? This is not about becoming obsessed with your unconscious. It's about stopping your unconscious from becoming your ruler. Because the goal is simple, to become the kind of person who can feel everything and still choose what they do next. So your shadow is not running your life because it is evil. It is running your life because it has never been invited into consciousness. Ignored parts do not disappear. They rule from below. But the moment you turn toward what you've disowned, without shame, without theatrics, without moral panic, something begins to loosen. Not instantly, but permanently. Because once something is seen clearly, it can no longer control you from the dark. So here is the question that matters. What part of you have you been pretending does not exist? The anger you swallowed to be loved, the desire you hid to be accepted, the ambition you shamed to avoid envy, the boundaries you abandoned to keep peace. Because the price of being good might be your life. Not your public life, your inner life, your ability to feel real. And if you can face that, then you are already doing the work most people avoid for an entire lifetime. If this resonated with you, write one sentence in the comments. I see my shadow. And if you want to continue exploring the hidden forces shaping your mind, your behavior, and your life, subscribe to Hidden Dynamics. The next video is essential.